Welcome back on the program. Good morning, Abuja. It's a beautiful Wednesday morning, and we're having a wonderful time on the program so far. And guess what? Our studio is being graced by Benedicta Emmanuel. I know you want to meet her because I am excited that she's here in the studio. Benedicta Emmanuel. It's a wonderful person. She's a writer, she's a teacher, she is passionate about young people, and she's giving back in every way she can. But most importantly, she is giving back in a very unique way, and that is educating young girls on female reproductive health. You're welcome on the program, Benedicta.
Thank you very much.
Yes. So now I was caught up when I saw that you're a writer. Your profile is so rich, but I am caught by the writing part. So now, you are not a journalist. In fact, you studied human anatomy in the university.
Yes, I did.
But here you're writing almost on everything. Why? What inspired you to want to write?
All right. So, back in my secondary school days, I enjoyed writing. First of all, I noticed that, okay, when questions were asked in school, that's aside mathematics, of course, because that is not my topic.
Okay.
I'm speaking English, language, biology, and the other subjects rather. I noticed that I always loved giving answers to the best of my knowledge. I love to be explicit.
Okay.
So from there, I started noticing that passion for writing. So I like to write a lot. And then after secondary school, I made an attempt to write a book.
Wow.
On a topic I loved so much, determination,
Okay.
a pathway to success. That was the title of the book. And then as I started writing, I started digging out information. And prior to this time, there was something I did a year after my secondary school, prior to the time I wrote this book.
Okay.
So I am so intentional about my English language. So I took, I think, like 3 months. It's something very weird, okay? I took like 3 months to study the dictionary.
Wow.
So what I did was I would pick some words and memorize them, get to know the meanings, get to know what context to use them, okay, when to use them, and all of that. So that was prior to when I took that interest in writing that book. And then I started writing. And when I showed it to, okay, at the time I was just 16. Yeah. So I took it to somebody to just help me take a look and let me know what he feels about the book. And his comments were very encouraging. So that was where I started making a lot of researches on several topics and all of that. That's why today I can literally write on any topic, because over time I've spent time investing in learning on several topics: business, leadership, relationships, and several others like that, success inclusive.
Okay. Benedicta here is also a leadership and business strategist, but the part that concerns our conversation this morning is talking about female reproductive health.
Yes.
And your intervention with young girls.
Yes.
When we talk about female reproductive health, we how will I put it? We're making it smaller because we're focusing principally on the female gender. However, we know that is a vast field.
Yes, it is.
Yes. So now let's get into the context of it. What exactly do we mean by female reproductive health?
Okay, so female reproductive health, like the topic is, or like the topic sounds, it has to do basically with female folks and their reproductive health, that is spanning from menstruation to menopause. So there are several activities that take place around these phases, from the start of her menstrual cycle to the point where she arrives menopause. And I've come to realize that a lot of ladies within this phase, there are several casualties that they face. For example, infections, early menopause and stuff like that. So female reproductive health is a very beautiful topic for me to speak on, because I feel like most females in Nigeria, in fact, as a matter of fact, I think up to 60% of females in Nigeria, I'm not talking the whole world now, I'm talking Nigeria, have encountered several issues on this phase. That's from menstruation to menopause. They've experienced several issues, and I feel like most of them don't get to talk about it. They just curb it, and because they don't talk about it, they don't get help. Somebody said a problem shared is half solved. So most people don't want to talk about it because they feel ashamed. Certain things they experience, they don't feel like they should speak about it, or they don't know the right persons to talk to, which is why I took a very personal interest in it. And as much as possible, I would like to educate young ladies, even ladies in their 40s and above, because it goes round. Okay. Because it is from menstrual cycle to menopause, so it affects all age grades.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about the fact, you mentioned that this thing is from the menstruation to menopause, yes, and all that happens within that time.
Yes.
And we know this spans several years in the life of a female.
Yes, approximately 20 years.
20 years, that's a lot of time. So, so now, what are these factors that actually disturb this, the health of the female reproductive organ?
Okay, thank you very much.
Let's just list some of them and try to explain them. What are these things?
Okay, I would take us back a bit.
Okay.
So, first of all, before I come to the factors, for somebody to be healthy, it means the person is in a complete state of well-being, right? Okay. So female reproductive health now talks about the complete state of well-being from menopause, from menstrual cycle to menopause. Yes. So there are several factors that affect the well-being of a lady, talking reproductively rather. Okay. So some of these factors are, first of all, their exposure to information. So I would say ignorance as the first point, because there are certain things a lot of ladies don't know that they practice, and it might not bring out its effect immediately, but in the long run is a prolonged effect, and if not handled on time, it causes a lot of damages. For example, infertility. Okay. It causes infertility, and that is because of lack of information or lack of the right information. Some people have access to information, but the wrong information. So yes, that is one. Secondly, there are cultural practices. For example, if I have a young lady now from, there's a part in Benue State, the Igede people to be precise, that circumcise their females, is also a factor, because those things affect females reproductively. Now, I had to speak with a friend of mine who is Igede, and unfortunately, she was circumcised. She could not escape it. So for them, it is a culture. Once you get to puberty, you get circumcised. Their reason is they don't want you to get attracted to the opposite gender on time, so you are able to preserve yourself for your husband and all of that. But the effect that has is the part of the vagina where they cut off for circumcision is a very sensitive part that should help in sex. Yes, should help in sexual activities. And if that part is taken off, it now goes back to affect the man who marries such a lady, because that part is sensitive. It pushes sexual drive, and if that part is absent, you know that the man has a lot of work to do in trying to stimulate anything. So that is also an issue to the female reproductive health, because if there's no healthy sexual life, a lot of things can be affected. I'm sure you know what I mean.
Yes.
So that is also a factor. So I've mentioned ignorance, I've mentioned cultural practices, and then again, as I'll mention this as the last one. I'm focusing on these three because these are the major ones.
Okay.
That we are facing as a problem in Nigeria for females. The last one is the female's relationship with her partner. Now, there are certain things that a man expects a woman to do, especially when it comes to sex and all of those things, that invariably it affects her reproductive health. For example, sorry, this is a female reproductive topic, so I have to be as explicit as possible. For example, the foreplays that happen before sex. So you see, it also boils down to their partners. And then talking about the use of mouth, there are certain enzymes in the mouth that the vagina should not be exposed to. And men think that this should be normal because, well, she's my wife, she's my partner, but some of these things actually affect female reproductive health because it introduces substances. Okay, so the vagina has a certain pH.
Okay.
And if that pH is altered, it breeds, it makes that place a very good ground for yeast infections to grow. And if not handled on time, can cause a very big damage in future.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, see, the other things.
He should stay faithful.
Okay.
Because having multiple sex partners as a man does not necessarily affect him as much as it affects a woman, because the woman is open. You get, so having multiple sexual partners as a man, you go out there and then you get all forms of infections, and then you're having intercourse with your wife or your partner. You might not see your symptoms, you might not get anything as a matter of fact, but the lady is affected. So I think sticking to one partner will also help so much in improving their reproductive health.
Okay, sometimes it's not just the men now. The women have multiple partners as well.
You asked me for the role of men. Yes. That is why I mentioned
yes,
that.
Yes, I know. I'm trying to look. Does this also...
Yes, it applies to the women because having multiple sexual partners as a woman can also, in fact, is a major role in affecting, it plays a very key role in affecting your reproductive health as a woman. Having multiple sexual partners can expose you to several sexually transmitted infections, urinary tract infections, pelvic inflammatory disease, PID, especially PID. And PID is one of the most cause of infertility in women, PID, because what PID does is it inflames your fallopian tubes and then causing a blockage, which means if your fallopian tube is blocked, based on the makeup of a woman, your eggs cannot pass through to come down for fertilization. So most times PID is a major disease that comes from having sexual partners, multiple sexual partners. And so I think a lady that wants to maintain her reproductive health should stick to one partner. And
now let's look at some other infections. You've mentioned PID. You talked about the pH level of the vagina staying intact, otherwise it becomes a healthy breeding ground for yeast. Let's just quickly look at some of the other infections. Just tell us some of those infections and tell us how we can avoid them.
Okay, so for this interview, I might not mention so many other infections because STIs, UTIs, and PID are the most prevalent. Yes, there's human papilloma virus, HPV, but it occurs in like say 20 out of 200 women. It's not so prevalent, but STIs, UTIs, and PIDs are very prevalent, and so I'll be taking special interest in that this morning. So most of these infections, like I earlier mentioned, especially PID, has to do with having multiple sexual partners. That's one. And then secondly, I think I need to address this because a lot of persons think that ladies with PID are automatically sexually active or have multiple sexual partners, but most other times, it does not result from having multiple sexual partners. It also results from having untreated infections that was prolonged
over time.
Okay. Because PID has to do with your fallopian tubes and all of that. So when infection has stayed over time, it keeps going up. It keeps going up. It keeps going up like that. Because most times, vaginal infections, for example, vaginitis, has to do just with the vagina. It does not go up.
Okay.
So anything that passes the cervix and goes up will lead to PID.
Okay.
So most times, it's not just having multiple sexual partners, but also having untreated infection for a long period of time, which is why I believe, now I'm talking about how to prevent it, I believe that a woman should understand how her body works. For example, I have a friend, and I do that also. Once I notice a change in my discharge, I always go for a test and treat immediately, because it is very important. If you don't do so, over time it turns to something else. Okay. And because we are so delicate, it should be worked on. That is one. UTIs has so many causes.
By UTIs, a urinary tract infections.
Infection, okay. Yes, can also be a result of sexual partners and all of that, but also UTIs can be as a result of hormonal imbalance.
Okay.
Yes, can be a result of hormonal imbalance, can be a result of stress even. Sometimes stress exposes you to a lot of infections and all of that. So to prevent this, I believe that, okay, you need a lot of rest, one. You need to work on your dieting. Yes, dieting too poor dieting can lead to infections, okay, and all of that. So I believe we should maintain a healthy diet and okay, all of that.
All right. I know there's a lot that you have to tell us, and there's a lot that we need to cover on this topic, which is why I'm going to make a special plea that we would have to have you back on the program, maybe on a different date, so that we can continue this conversation and talk about all of this. So to give our viewers a perspective that they need to have in order to protect themselves from all of these infections. And to the male folks, there's a role you have to play here. You have to get this information across to your partners, as well as keeping yourself safe. That is what Benedicta Emmanuel is sharing with us this morning. It's been a pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll go on a short break. When we return, Good Morning Abuja continues. Please stay with us.